All I see online is people running to the Apple store to buy Mac Mini M4s so they can spin up their own version of OpenClaw. I tried spinning up OpenClaw. I spent 10 hours with it the other night, and in my opinion, it's not a very good piece of equipment. Now, a few reasons for my opinion on OpenClaw to be negative is the way I tried to set it up was fully locally. I don't want any data leaving my network, especially with a tool like OpenClaw. I mean, there is several hundred vulnerabilities currently. Skills are pretty much unprotected, but MCP servers don't know what's actually doing yet. OpenClaw itself was vibe coded. Nothing wrong with vibe coding applications, but then again, an AI built the app to interface with other AIs, so you don't really know what's going on there. Documentation changes all the time. But I tried to set it up with Llama, Qwen, Llama 3.2b, Qwen 3, Qwen 2.5, different parameter models, and I found that OpenClaw would take about 2.5 minutes to reply to a message, whereas a terminal will take under a second. Now, upon investigation, I found that OpenClaw, when I would send it a message via Telegram, it would then wrap my prompt, the text I sent, in 30,000 tokens, which was a wrapper. So OpenClaw knew what to do. It had the skills, the context, the setup, how everything was working, and it would send back to OpenClaw. And poor Qwen or Llama then has to dig through all that. Now, the big downside to that is 90% of people that I've seen on TikTok, Instagram, X setting this up, they're using Claude API, OpenAI. Now, the problem there is you are going to eat into a monthly budget. I asked Claude, how much would it cost if I did 50 messages a day with 30,000 tokens plus a prompt? If I was to use Opus 4.6, which is the best at coding, so if you're setting up a coding agent with OpenClaw, you're looking at £600 to £800 a month. If you're using ChatGPT 4.1 mini, this is obviously the cheapest model that OpenAI can do at some stage. It would cost you like maybe $2 to $20 a day, but your code is going to be shit. My point is OpenClaw is an expensive way to do AI, so I did it my own way. Introducing Gerald. So I've built Gerald. Now this is a native macOS app that I built specifically to interface with my N8N webhook. So I built my own version of OpenClaw from scratch. Now I built this in less time than it took me to test and get OpenClaw to reply to a singular message. I built an entire automation system and an Xcode app to talk to it on my phone and on my MacBook. So we're actually going to talk to Gerald this time. So I'm first going to start with hello, how are you? So this was an app that I built very quickly, so it doesn't look the prettiest. So here we are doing top notch. Thanks for asking. How can Gerald assist the mighty Nath today? So you can see it's got its own personality. Now this is all self-hosted. I control all of the prompts, all of the tools, everything there. So what I'm going to ask it next is, can you please check the GPU usage on the AI server? So what it's going to do is it's going to use that SSH terminal to log into the AI server and find out what's actually going on. Now that's pretty quick. So you can see we've got the 3080 in there, it's 59 degrees, no fans on, which is nice. So about 94% usage. The utilization stat seems to be wrong, but there's a few things we can keep asking it. So what AI models do I have running via Llama on the AI server? This is obviously very low level stuff compared to what you can do with OpenClaw, but this is just proof that my 8-hour build can still interact with servers as an AI agent and control AI agents in sub-workflows and sub-workflows within sub-workflows, which is all OpenClaw is. There you go. I've asked it to create a file in a home directory called test. The file test has been created in the home directory. So it says your, but we use the same home directory, which is why. Okay, moving on from that, we're going to test its live knowledge. So can you tell me about the movie? It's Scary Movie 6. Now what it should then do is go out to Wikipedia and actually get the information. Because you mean Scream, which is part of the horror film. So now it's asking me for more information. I'll just tell it to do some research for me. I meant Scary Movie. There you go. So now it should automatically go and pick up that Wikipedia node. There you go. So Scary Movie 6 is an upcoming American parody film. The cast includes the returning actors. But there we go. So now we have up-to-date knowledge. We can access our entire home server's UIs. I can add separate tools to access my Mac Mini, as well as my mini PC, as well as my partner's PC, as well as my TV. Any smart home device I can connect to it, especially since I've done Home Assistant. This AI can control my heating, my hot water, my TV, my light bulbs. Gerald is the most powerful thing in my home network right now. I'm sure he has more control than I do. Okay, so let's jump into how this actually works then, because I want to show people that there's a different way to do AI. So if I bring up my N8N system here, now it's important to know that N8N is exposed via Cloudflare for me. So I have my services and my IP addresses, and I have special security for webhooks and API calls. This is not something that I'm too sure on how OpenClaw does. Now, the way that Telegram API works is it only accepts webhooks over HTTPS, not HTTP. When I installed OpenClaw, I didn't install any reverse proxy beforehand. I didn't specify how I wanted the traffic to reach out to Telegram. It just made it work. Somehow, OpenClaw managed to configure a HTTPS tunnel to Telegram without me knowing how. So that's my first concern, is I need to dig into how that worked more. And I just want to add that I am on a Mac Mini M4, but I did not buy this for OpenClaw. I bought this last year. Just throwing it out there before somebody comments. Okay, but let's actually jump into the workflow, a kind of exciting bit. So we have Gerald at the top. This looks complicated and like a lot of jargon, but I promise you it's not. This is the entire workflow here. And then you'll see I've got two models here that go into AI agent. This is Qwen 2.5 and Llama 3.2b. And then I have a memory node, so it can remember the last 10 messages or even further. I'll show you this more in a minute. And then just a boatload of tools. So you can think of tools the same way you think of skills with OpenClaw, but the benefit to N8N is I can fully control these sub workflows, and I can add a full personal memory system which has a sub AI model. So this is kind of what OpenClaw does. You have the orchestrator which controls the sub AI models. That's exactly what I'm doing here. You'll see that I have, this will be Llama 3.2, the latest. That'll be the 3B model, I believe, that interacts with my personal memory. It remembers facts about me. So when my AI agent, which gets my input from the hook, when it is polled and it needs to remember something about me, maybe it needs a bit more context about what I've asked, it will pull down from personal memory. Llama will then find a specific memory, and then it can go into the vector store because it's Postgres database. And then inside of here, I have another AI model called Nomic Embed Text Latest. So in here, we already have 1, 2, 3 models for one prompt. That does not go outside my home network. I know exactly how these work. I can control these models. And the thing that I think that some people don't understand with OpenClaw is when you use an API and you're getting OpenClaw to interact with your whole file system, it can interact with your calendar, you can connect your emails. That's like the big thing about OpenClaw is you connect it to everything. Now, every time you do a prompt and it collects that data, you're sending it to Anthropic or OpenAI. I think that's a security thing that people don't really think about, is you are sending all of your data outside of your home network to companies, which is why OpenClaw is currently being sponsored by OpenAI, because more ChatGPT usage via API is more money is better trained models. It's an endless cycle. Whereas this I own. Nobody gets any money from me except, my energy company. Okay, so let's jump into a little bit more about tools, and then we'll cover some kind of how we can make it a bit more OpenClaw-y with some MCP servers in a minute. So all of these tools, these are sub workflows except for this one. This is a built-in Wikipedia tool, which just allows my AI agent to go and get any article off Wikipedia, so it has up-to-date knowledge all the time. But for example, I do have this tool here called Call AI Server SSH. So I've described it as a mandatory tool, and what it can do is execute bash commands on my Linux server via SSH and use it immediately whenever I tell it to. So if I come back to our overview, you'll see our subflows here. I should add tags really to tidy this up, but I built this in under 8 hours, this entire system. So if we go to Llama SSH terminal, it's very easy. This is the entire sub workflow. So you'll see the command is a string, and then inside execute a command, it just has my SSH set up, and then it executes the command from the input in the working directory you can give it. So if I then go back to Gerald and into that SSH tool, you'll see that the command here, which is the input of the sub workflow, is defined automatically by the model. Whichever model I have selected over here, if it's Qwen or Llama 3.2, it will decide what command to run for me, and it can reiterate and reiterate. So I see a lot of people with OpenClaw saying it just keeps getting stuck. It can't do much. It says, I need to try again, and errors, or it needs human intervention. It can't solve captures. Well, we can get around that with a few cool tools. So I'm building this out properly. And I do actually have something that Gerald stands for. I just can't remember what it is. Oh yeah, so I acronymed him as Guy Executing Random Local Automation Duties. But I think I can get something better than that. When I send it a message from my macOS app, it will then set the system prompt. So inside here, this is not the best way to do it. I went through a whole rabbit hole of making Gerald be able to edit his master prompt as well as his memory. Kind of got it working, but then he overwrit his master prompt once, and I need to think of a better way to do it. But This is like under a day of work that I put in here. And then it will execute an SQL query on our database that we have to gather any Gerald rules. If I talk to Gerald and I tell it to call me boss man, for example, Gerald will put that into not in this memory here, it will put it into personal memory. That this is long-term and permanent and can be accessed all the time. And that way he can also delete memories as well. So if I go, Gerald, don't call me that anymore, he will then delete the memory from here, whereas this is just like the last 10 or so messages. And that will be like the call manage rules. So this will be another sub workflow if we jump in here. There you go. So that's it. So it just passes the instructions and then edits my database and job done. And then over here, I just have a filter node. So sometimes with Qwen models, the AIs can wrap thinking around it, where it'd be like, okay, the user wants me to do da-da-da-da-da. I don't want any of that, so I got Claude to make me a nice code node, which filters everything out. And then finally, I just respond to the webhook, which is this original one here. My favorite thing about this as well is I do have Home Assistant set up. I've removed it just for a minute because as you can see, I've actually got it set up and working. So I could message Gerald from my phone at work saying, put my heating on, so when I get home at 6, my house is 20 degrees. So if I come into here, you'll see our action switch. You can get the entities, clean statuses. There's loads it can do in here. So I am building my own version of OpenClaw. I do not want to be sending my data to another company, and I do not want to know how OpenClaw is configuring its HTTP access to Telegram, all of its gateway stuff. I don't know how secure that is on the network. I imagine I would isolate that on an entire subnet if I was to use it. But the AI that actually does things, we have made that with Gerald. And I love Gerald. I'm going to add image generation, video generation. I can pass images through to him, which is something I'm working through on the app now. And as far as code generation goes, what I can do is then create a sub workflow. So for example, a lot of people use Claude Code with a pro subscription, and then they tie their Claude code into OpenClaw and then get Opus or Sonnet to code for them. What I can do in this instance is just add a tool, just do a sub workflow, and I'll go create a new sub workflow. And inside there, I'll then download an Llama coding model. So it's this is the orchestrator, and then inside of here would be the agent which does the coding, passes it back up to here. We can do some final checks. We can add that into the system prompt, and it can just reiterate until the code works. So it can work for itself as well. It's not like a one and done. The AI agent will bounce between different tools as needed. And the big thing for me, a lot of people on OpenClaw are like, bang, I can use, Blender. I can do all of this. All of that is just an MCP server. So all an MCP server is, so it's this over here. So if you know what an API call is, an MCP is the same thing, just for AI models to interact with other interfaces. So if I wanted to connect Blender here, I could give Gerald access to Blender via an MCP server rather than an OpenClaw skill. So I hope that kind of made sense as to what I've built. I'm hoping that I've kind of showed you today that using N8N, Llama, Xcode and GitHub Copilot to make your own app, that you don't need to download OpenClaw if you don't want to. If you're struggling, I struggled for over, like 10 hours to get it actually working at all. And even then it was like 3 minutes per message, which is painful on Telegram. I mean, you can see how fast Gerald is. So if I come back up here and just go hello, if I actually type in my box, there you go. That's so much quicker. And this is all locally hosted. The big thing for me is no data leaves my network, and I don't pay subscription fees. I feel bad for some people who have forgot to set API limits, and in 3 weeks' time are going to get hit with the biggest OpenClaw bill ever because they wanted to try and make some websites. I just want to add a disclaimer that I'm not shitting on OpenClaw. It's a very, very cool tool. I am going to put some more time in setting it up. I just thought that I could build something better myself in less time than it took me to set up OpenClaw, so this is tuned to me at the moment. Now, I'm more than happy to also share my N8N executions, my workflow, so just let me know if that's of interest. If you also wouldn't mind hitting that subscribe button, it really helped me out fighting the algorithm. But with that, enjoy your new Mac Mini from the Apple Store for OpenClaw, and I will see you later. Goodbye.